Hey everybody, welcome to this week's podcast. We've been working on the macronutrients. That's the big stuff, right? These are the main parts of what our body needs. And today we're doing carbs, because last week we did protein. So Amy, you got some really good notes here. Any kind of prelude into this?
Maybe we should start with our week in the review.
Oh my gosh, here we go.
Let's go through our breathing.
Let's do it.
Sleep.
Breathe. How are you doing on stress, Amy?
It's been a good week. We had a great weekend, right?
It was a slow weekend for us.
We had more margins.
It was raining though.
I think interestingly, we had this was a good life lesson. On Sunday, we had numerous things that we could do, and we were feeling a little overwhelmed, and we had to pick and choose and set some boundaries and margins. But then at the end of the night, it was so nice that I felt like I could breathe all day because I wasn't stressing about trying to fit too much in. And I was feeling a little guilty at first, but then when we finally said, this is what we can fit in and do, and it just felt so good. And
you sure
and
it's not that I'm just
Monday
being nicer to you, maybe?
It could have been that too. You might have been in a better state.
Oh, okay, maybe.
No, breathe was good.
And I'm definitely getting into my rhythm of getting up better in the morning, which I absolutely love. Spending some stillness in the morning before it gets light. It's real easy now to do that, right? Because it doesn't get light until 7:30 or whatever. Yeah, so that was good. Eat, I think we've been halfway decent. Amy has me not eating cheese or dairy now.
2-week
to see
trial.
how
Today's
that
day
goes.
1.
Oh my God! No, day 2. I did it yesterday.
Oh, okay. Day 2.
I'm on day 2.
Okay.
Anyway, so for any of you, when we're asking you to do stuff, just know that she does the same thing to me. Just so you know.
That's right.
And then the move thing. I've been push mowing the yard. It's about, I don't know. It's not even half an acre. It's not a lot. And I gotta wear a mask because the clippings just absolutely kill me. But I was at 160 beats per minute for an hour.
You got your target heart
and
rate.
I burned 850 calories because we're going to get into that here today, right? A little bit more.
And we've been walking the dog a lot and trying to
Max,
do a
keep him
brisker
alive.
walk
God
to
bless
try to
him.
get our
He's
heart
10
rate
years
up.
old.
He will be.
In
And
November.
then the sleep, it's been better for me. I think as I'm balancing out those other 3 pillars, my sleep is definitely improving. So that's good too.
Yeah, I'm doing well with that one.
So.
All right, macronutrients.
Back to
Here we go.
macros.
Carbohydrates.
So what are macros? They, large. They're the large nutrients that basically our body requires a large amount of those in order to function optimally, right? So micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, we really just need tiny amounts of those to do their job.
Right.
So the fats, the carbs, the proteins are those macronutrients. Carbs are really important. Their primary purpose is that fuel, right? They give us glucose, which is our basic fuel for every cell that turns into ATP, and then we get energy in our cells.
And we had a funny conversation on this last night, right? Because there's a big difference between a calorie and a carb, right?
Yes.
And you were just
trying to explain.
And the calorie is the energy piece, and then you used the word ATP, which is now we're into the methylation cycle, right? That's what our body's doing, is taking and creating
the
energy.
ultimate energy in every cell is ATP. But we have to have the glucose,
it gets broken
the
down
fat,
from all this
they
other
use
stuff
it to make it.
But the calorie really is a measure of energy in the foods that we eat. And so, yeah, I think that's good for people to know. Difference between the carb, and you've got some notes in here about what the carb
so
equivalent.
A carb and a protein give us 4 calories per gram.
There you go.
Fat gives us 9 calories per gram.
Isn't that interesting? It's higher. I thought that was an interesting
And
note.
so when we're eating, that food, those grams get converted into calories. It's kind of the energy in the form of heat that gets produced so that our bodies can basically function.
Oh, that's a good way to think
so,
of it.
But what we really want to focus on today is when we're looking at carbs, not all carbs are created equal, right?
And then this got our discussion on the honey bun. right?
Yes, yes, yes. So, and not all calories are created equal. 100 calories, let's look at that as an
Now,
example.
everyone listening, Amy's probably never had a honey bun, and I have, just so you know.
I've tasted it's like stale. I don't know what, but I know you used to love them.
Yeah.
So
I don't get them. I haven't had one.
so 100 calories equals like a half of a donut. These are some examples.
Right.
Or 4 cups of broccoli.
That would be preferred, the
Or
broccoli.
a quarter of your honey
Quarter
bun.
of the honey bun.
So those are all the same amount of calories. But when we eat those, so it used to be thought like just whatever, a calorie is a calorie, and if you're trying to diet, you restrict it to this many calories, and then you will lose weight. But we know that's not true. Also, calories, when we eat those 100 calories, there's a lot of different information. Our food talks to our cells and gives us energy and nutrients, vitamins, minerals, fiber that we're all going to be talking about. So those 100 calories in that broccoli, there are tons of things. There are vitamins and minerals and fiber and phytonutrients. In the donut, there's sugar and some chemicals.
But
and
I mean, this is
flour.
what we have to tell people is that, the brain loves glucose. And it looks at the honey bun and the donut as quick energy. It will always love that over broccoli. Always. So it's not personal. It's a genetic thing, and we're all predisposed to that.
So we should break down the science in that to help them understand why. Why does that happen? So again, back to the whole thing carbs do is they get broken down into glucose, which is fuel. Especially our brain prefers glucose, really sensitive to it. If somebody's diabetic or somebody gets hypoglycemic, one of their first symptoms, they will get confused, pass out, feel faint, lightheaded. It's because our brain is so sensitive to the effects of too much or too little sugar. And our bodies obviously do too. But then when you look at it, there's really 3 types of carbs. There are complex carbs, there are simple carbs, and then there's fiber. And so when we talk back to the simple carbs in that donut, it's pretty empty calories. There aren't vitamins and minerals and things like that we think of in other foods. And it's a simple carb. It's very simple for it to break down and become
quick energy.
Sugar
Brain
or
loves
glucose
all this stuff.
Really fast.
Anything out of a package, generally, we love.
And it's interesting because the way that it gets dumped into sugar and how quickly, it also gives signals to our body, because if there's fiber or not, such as a complex carb. So let's start with those. Let's start with like a starch or a complex carbohydrate.
Right.
Those are what I would call slow carbs. And then the simple sugar, what we talked about, was a fast carb. Okay?
So when you think of the blood sugar, right, you're eating a honey bun and a donut, your blood sugar goes up super fast. And whatever rate it goes up, it goes down that same rate. Now, when you're going down, this is when the alarm system, and you talked about this before, the monitoring system within our body that goes, oh my gosh, Eric, your blood sugar's dropping so fast. You need to do something.
Alert.
And this is when you might be hangry or shaky or, I don't know, confused even, mentally.
Anxious, irritable,
anxious.
tired.
And so that's your simple stuff. But those complex ones, the sugar, the blood sugar goes up super slow, and then usually goes down at the same rate. So you never get that irritability with those kinds of
and
foods.
And it does.
Generally.
So it's in your system, in your blood longer. It keeps you full longer, and it fills you up, and you're less likely to overeat. Whereas a simple sugar, and things that are really processed, they have less water, they have less nutrient density, and so you don't get as full. And so then you do feel like you overeat easily when you're eating like ice cream.
I've gotten smarter. I mean, think of the Eggo waffle with the maple syrup, which was really tasty. But about 9:30, when I was crashing, and then I would just eat peanut butter. It was not a good diet, actually.
And the other thing, those complex carbs also really feed our healthy gut bacteria, and that's important. Those probiotics, or those healthy bacteria, need prebiotics, which is complex carbs and fiber. So examples of complex carbs: beans, legumes, fruit, whole grains. Basically, we're talking about whole plant, whole foods, right?
Things that
that
come
are
out of
more
the ground.
in their natural form.
Yeah.
And then also like starchier things are like lima beans and corn and potatoes. So in moderate amounts, because again, the starchier something is, the higher glycemic load.
You mean we can't call the French fry a good vegetable to eat?
No, unfortunately.
Well, you were saying this the other day, because not only is it have the starch has it's a higher glycemic index, but then when you fry foods too, the brain also loves that.
You get the fat.
You were saying that.
Yes. So when you put sugar and fat together, it's like a super duper reward to our brain. And then it remembers that and it craves it even more.
So it's not my fault that I like French fries.
Processed foods, I know, all of us.
But you have to be careful.
And then also things like bran, oats, quinoa, barley, and whole wheat or whole grain products are still good forms of carbs and starches and complex carbs. Now onto the simple carbs. Those are what we call processed or refined carbs. They are things that, again, quickly get broken down, doesn't take much work to turn into that glucose or that energy, spikes our blood sugar. Again, we keep triggering that hunger and the food cravings in our brain. And again, they're usually more empty calories. They don't really have
Well, and you've
as
said
much
this so
of
many
the
times with the plant-rich whole
vitamins.
foods. You got the phytonutrients, I mean the vitamins, right? The color, you always talk about the colors of the
Antioxidants, the
rainbow, which means
colors.
you're basically pulling minerals out of the ground that creates a different color in the vegetables that we eat.
Right.
Right? So
Right.
think of what you're getting when you don't get, just because a Twinkie is yellow, you can't really, there's no phytonutrients.
fit the
it
yellow
doesn't
rainbow,
work
no.
that. Yeah, okay.
So simple carbs, we think of the whites. A lot of people will think, well, it said whole grain or whole wheat bread. It comes from a whole grain, but if it's real uber processed and they mill it and they smash it
Right.
and they refine it and everything,
Well,
they bleach it, then white flour is usually bleached flour. By then, it's really been stripped of all of its nutrients and its fiber, and again, it becomes like sugar.
Because generally the body has to work to break it down, and it knows that that's not as efficient at creating the sugar that the body needs to make the ATP for the cell than something that's already broken down into a tiny element, right? That our small intestine can absorb rather quickly.
And even rice over like brown rice or whole grain rice, there is just more fiber and starch and the complex carbs in those. And so it's just being aware. And then fiber, lastly, fiber is something that is in these, basically it's only in plant products, animal products and meat and dairy. Animal products do not have fiber. So you have to get it through plants. Fiber is so important. It stimulates our digestion, lowers your risk of all kinds of things. It lowers your cholesterol, lowers your risk of colon cancer, heart disease, a lot of it. Oh, it regulates blood sugar. It keeps your blood sugar more stable. So they're non-digestible, but they do keep us feeling full longer, they feed those healthy bacteria. And fiber is in all of those things we talked about up top of the complex carbs and the whole grains and foods and vegetables and fruits.
And so definitely if you're in your diet, you're like, hey, I feel these fluctuations up and down a lot of times with my blood sugar or just irritability, focusing more on the complex carbs and the fiber and trying to move away from these simple carbs is going to be ideal. Right.
And even when you step back
from a
and
blood
look
sugar
at
standpoint,
for sure, if you look at even what fruits are best, and again, fruit's good for you, but it is looking at something that has a skin or a lot more fiber, like berries and things are going to have a slower release of that sugar than a banana. Banana's still good for you, but you have to watch your portions because it does have a high glycemic load. It's a little easier that it gets converted into that glucose or sugar in our
and you've
blood.
had a good note for me, which is, get your fruits in the morning and then stick with vegetables in the afternoon, generally, is a good rule of thumb because of the glycemic load with the fruit.
Yeah.
Because you'll consume that energy throughout our day. I mean, what, minimum 1,500?
Active, yes. And there have been a lot of studies looking at, a lot of people demonize carbs, and there's this big craze on the low carb diet or no carb or keto and things like that. And carbs, they have a huge role. As you see, all the things we talked about, all these good and smart carbs, they're so important. And they even did studies looking at a high carb, a moderate carb, and a really low carb diet. And the moderate carb group had the lowest mortality, meaning like lowest death rates, you know, as they studied them out, because of all these added benefits that we talked about with your cholesterol and your heart and your cancer risks and colon health and the good bacteria and just overall the use of them. So I think that helps. We really focus on nutrition and healthy eating, not on a diet or a plan or a fad or something to help people lose weight.
Right.
And I love, again, back to Dr. Hyman's book, this book really breaks down. I mean, he even goes into vegetables and helps you understand in more detail what we are talking about. And he goes through fruits, and he talks about sugar and sweeteners, and he talks about grains. There is so much to learn about food, but I think just in the big picture, if we can remember what you just said about the complex carbs, the smart carbs, the fiber, the things that are going to give us all these health benefits.
And you were saying yesterday, do your brain a favor, right? It needs glucose. It needs the healthy fats. You know.
And a stable blood sugar. Again, one of the biggest indicators, or one of the biggest things they're starting to study, is how important a stable blood sugar is for longevity, for preventing things like Alzheimer's. I mean, people that even have like a borderline elevated blood sugar, like prediabetes, they have higher risk of Alzheimer's or dementia in the future. And so they, you know, some are even saying Alzheimer's is type 3 diabetes. And I mean, it's very, sometimes it's not shown on normal labs that we would check, but if you go searching, you'll find that even if your blood sugar, fasting blood sugar is like right on the borderline, you know, at 100, that's probably too high. I mean, we want it under that.
And if you're listening to this and you're like, there's no way I can do that, you can do it. I mean, you know, out of the gate, when you're making these shifts, you're really kind of, the brain still thinks you're in survival mode when you're eating a lot of simple carbs. And you do not want to ever give those up. The brain doesn't want to give it up. But usually, and it takes a while, but after 21 days, I mean, I'd love to eat a salad now. I mean, once I get into the salads, like my brain's like, yes, this is really good food for you, Eric. Right? And I've never not wanted to finish a salad once I started. But it takes a while.
It does. And look at processed foods, like you were back to talking about how they've kind of figured out to put sugar and fat and salt in things. And there's something called our nucleus accumbens in our brain, and it's that area that basically it regulates cravings and rewards and addictions. And so when you eat a processed food or like a really high sugar food, it stimulates. If they do brain scans, it'll light up just like it would if, you know, an alcoholic has a drink, or a drug addict has cocaine. I mean, it's that severe of a light up in our brain from it. And so a lot of times it's just understanding that and slowly resetting, like you said.
Be patient with yourself, forgiving, and it's like you always say, just start a new day if yesterday wasn't the best. But if you stay along that path, you will ultimately feel better and reduce the stress in the body and have a longevity that we're promoting at OPT2LIV Medical, right?
Yes, and making it simple, we really do start with a very simple, our main message is looking at a really plant-rich diet. Half of your plate should be these healthy carbs. Half of your plate should be carbs, and that's, I think, floors people, but it's what type of carbs. And most of them are those complex non-starchy carbs. And then you can have a tiny portion, like a third a cup of rice or a third a cup of pasta, or a little slice of whole grain bread that has like the healthy nuts and seeds and the whole grains in them. So again, it's looking at that and getting rid of added sugars and processed foods.
Well, wait a minute, let's come back to the servings. How many servings are you pushing on me?
So, and that's a plate. So optimally in a day, we should be getting 7 to 9 servings.
7 to 9, so I want everybody to hear that. So when I'm coaching you and I'm just saying 5 servings out of the gate, just know Amy's got me doing 9. So
and that equals
not
about
a lot of
4
sympathy.
cups of plant-based foods a day. 4 cups. And that makes it more doable,
It's
I
doable.
think, when you look at putting.
But you got to
vegetables
just
and
slowly
fruits
make the
and
change. It
salads.
does take some time.
And another thing I just wanted to, in a subsequent book that he put together from food is called his Vegan Diet Plan. It's interesting. Again, there are all these fads out there. There's paleo and there's vegan and there's keto and all these. And so he jokes about, like, he's tried all these and he's like, I've tried paleo, I've tried vegan, and he came up in between at something he calls vegan, and it's really plant rich, like a vegan diet. Has hardly any dairy. If you want a little, it's a condiment, and then meat's a condiment, which paleo does a lot of meat, but they don't do any carbs or any potatoes or any,
Right.
so it's both have kind of their extremes, and you can meet in the middle. And I love his cookbook, has some great easy recipes, and again, it just helps you on this nutritional plan that can balance your blood sugar, give you energy, help your optimal aging, and especially when we're talking about smart carbs, because it does get hard to figure out like how to fix them, or
Right.
you don't always have to buy fresh. People, I was talking with someone today, and it's hard if you're single and you buy all these fresh things and they go bad. But frozen
Let's
is
just
the
be honest,
second
we throw away
best.
stuff every week.
It is.
It's just
hard.
part
It can
of
be
it.
very
And
yes.
you're not being wasteful because you need the stuff there in order to eat
You
it.
do need to, you're right. We do need to try as much as we can to get as much fresh, local, but also then the frozen is second best. There's a lot of really good options that it makes it easy and doable.
And the more we support these, people, the vendors that are doing the
Farmers
organic
markets
and some of the non-GMO and some of this stuff, just the more it will be there. And the more support we give them, I think, is very, very important. Well, thank you for sharing. This was wonderful. Hopefully this was very informative. If you guys have any questions, obviously if on YouTube it's subscribe, on the podcast it's follow. Give us some comments, give us some more topics. We look forward to seeing you guys soon. Take care. God bless.